Hi, hello Anastasia.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for participating to the RevOps Pooper. So our podcast today is about which skills do you need to be a RevOps, to recruit a RevOps person. Then Anastasia, maybe I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. So I am somebody who builds RevOps from scratch in various sized organizations. So I've tried my hand at pretty much every size setup there is to date. That's been through a mix of like consulting and freelancing and full-time jobs. At the moment, I'm working for a health tech, I should say, startup in London. Well, remotely. They're in London. I'm in Manchester. And it's the same kind of role. So RevOps from scratch, team of one, all the kind of really fun things that go along with it.
Okay, thank you. So could you just let us know how did you become a RevOps person?
Yeah, so I didn't graduate and think, I'm going to do RevOps for a living. So I graduated, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went into sales like a lot of people did. And I did it. I was good at it, but after 2 years, I just realized I was just really bored. So I spent an evening on the floor in my flat, surrounded by paper, just trying to figure out and piece together from different job specs that I saw, like what it is that I'd want to do next. And I found that it was ops. Like everything that I'd enjoyed was in the scope of someone who does operations. So approached my then manager and he was happy to give me the opportunity. So it's kind of been like, it's been a journey of learning specifically by doing and not necessarily having the right mentors, but kind of like feeling your way through. But it's been a path.
Yeah, sure. So talking about like first of all, talking about RevOps, what does mean RevOps for you? And maybe after that, could you tell us how could we learn RevOps? Because as you said, it's pretty specific, and there isn't any school programs to learn it. So except by learning by ourselves, which is great, but do you recommend any certifications, any things to do? So maybe first of all, what does mean RevOps for you?
Yeah, so RevOps for me, it means being Switzerland in a business. So it means being that independent, objective advisor. It also means like the analogy I always use when I present myself is it's like having like 3 eyes in your head, and each eye has to have a distinct focus on the department. So where we're looking after marketing and sales and customer success, you kind of have to split your focus evenly across them. So it's that person that you turn to for advice. It's somebody who sits outside of the day-to-day slightly to say, okay, guys, we're going off course here. So it's just kind of that safe pair of hands, that Switzerland of the organization, I'd say.
I like the European Switzerland way. Maybe let's say for North America, it's Canada style.
Probably, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and I guess so. Your second question is something I actually get asked a lot. Like I have a lot of juniors message me all the time and asking like, how do I get into revenue operations? Like, what do I do? My company doesn't do it. I'm going to be the first hire. And I think the first thing to get right is that by definition of RevOps, each company is already doing it, whether they know it or not, whether it's official or not, whether it's documented, but each company runs and has enough money to hire people. Therefore, you are doing RevOps. Something is going right. You are in some way kind of maximizing your revenue, right? That's the core of the job. So then the question obviously follows, like, how do I learn to be better, and the certifications and things like that. And honestly, I never know what to answer, just because of my own journey. I've not been formally mentored by anyone. I've just kind of picked it up as I went along. So it's quite hard to say. I think it depends on the kind of person that you are. If you're the kind of person that takes a lot of comfort in having those official certifications, then of course, like your Salesforce Trailblazing or your HubSpot Academy certifications would be a good place to start. But I don't know that there's any better way than just by going and messing things up royally and actually learning from that experience. And by doing that in an environment where people won't put you down for it, but will actually say, you know what, that was quite funny in retrospect. Let's try it again, but better next time. But I know that there's a lot of people offering sort of mentorship for junior colleagues, myself included. And I think outside of the official, maybe seeking a mentor and maybe doing it in a way that's like, okay, I've got this specific problem, let's talk through it together. Because, you know, it is contextual, and at the end of the day, you just have to learn on the job. It's not a fun thing to say, but there's no shortcuts here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like a lot of RevOps people I am talking with them right now for the podcast and every other stuff. I feel like they are more from, you know, the revenue mindset. It's more from people from sales, or sometimes from marketing, or can be people from technologies as well, but it's more like a mix between technologies and revenue and, you know, the processes. But I'd say like 80% of the people that I'm interviewing are from sales and or marketing. So what's your feeling about that? Because revenue, it's not only sales and marketing, which is like a big part of revenue, of course, but it's more about as well the processes and all the automations in your systems and your systems as well by themselves. Then, yeah, what's your feeling about marketing?
Yeah, so perhaps controversially, but I think okay, so there's always a balance to strike in revenue operations, because like if I'm looking for somebody to come in and do RevOps, I want a person who is like all of the above things. Like I want someone who can understand technical stuff. I want someone who understands data, but I also want someone empathetic enough to work with frontline teams, and also kind of has that little bit of something about them to be able to work with and advise marketing. So it can't be a person who is all soft skills, but it also can't be a person who's kind of like, you know, blinkered to everything apart from data and apart from revenue strategy and forecasting, for example. So it's hard to say what the best background is, because actually for me it's a blend of everything. But I think the most important thing is having that capacity for empathy, really, for people that you're working with. I think that's everything else can be taught. I'm a firm believer in that. But unless you can actually go and work with frontline teams, you know.
Yeah, it's basically taking people problems and issues and understanding them, and after that maybe trying to resolve them in different ways. So I totally agree when you talk about empathy. I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like some of the best conversations I've had, like from past clients and everything like that, they've all come out saying, God, that was like a therapy session. I've been like, yeah. I know, for me as well. But yeah, it's just, you have to have those soft skills, I think, and balance them with the technical stuff as well.
Okay, good. Talking about skills, for you, what are the 3-4 hard skills to really important to be a RevOps?
So I think the most important thing, I think, is that understanding of how data should be organized. A lot of our job depends on having a good database. So it's everything from like your KPIs, your forecasting, whatever. Unless that's organized in a common sense way, you can't do anything else. Like the processes don't make sense unless they're linked to something structural as well. So it's that understanding, that ability to be able to see in like rows and columns of how data should be structured. I think that's very important. I think specifically for teams of one, you have to know your CRM inside and out, because whilst I hope everyone one day will have a dedicated systems admin who will do the CRM building for them, in teams of one, in first hires, that's just not possible. So when I see people kind of applying and going for RevOps team of one jobs without knowledge of their CRM, I'm like, yikes. What are you what are you going to do there?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's my top two. And then I think the third one, just the general understanding of how businesses work. Because I think one of the things in RevOps is that you often have to make decisions about people's jobs, people's day-to-day. And it's that ability to go, okay, you're not actually my friend, Mr. or Mrs. Salesperson. You are somebody that is employed by the business to make it tick. And that understanding of like how the P&L is organized, for example, or what investors would want to see, it's not necessarily like a hard skill, like you don't need to be an Excel whiz for that, but it's the hard knowledge of, okay, when it comes down to it, the black and white is that we need X and this is how we'll achieve it.
Okay, talking about tools, systems, and people. So, we have I think different challenges about it. You need to implement processes to fit with people, but sometimes people don't fit to the processes, so you need to change it. It's quite a challenge every day. I don't know if you feel that, but personally in my RevOps role, I can feel that sometimes you're trying, of course, to adapt the process to the person, but the way back is that the person is no, we need to update the process, and you're like, okay, but the process should be the thing to leverage the revenue. Then what's the let's say the play between people and the tools? How do you manage it?
I think it depends, and it depends on what kind of objections people are raising and whether those objections are something that's personal to them or whether it's a widespread thing on the team. So we recently obviously switched over from Salesforce to HubSpot, and we'd implemented a system. The team had a lot of suggestions, and their suggestions were along similar threads to each other. So that's how I knew that I need to shut up for a second and listen to what they're telling me. If I had the whole team happy and just one person coming to me and frankly whining, that is the point where I'm like, okay, you need to stop.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's hugely contextual, but I think that it's a whole debate, isn't it, in RevOps, which comes first, people, process, or tools. I think tools is right at the bottom of the hierarchy because you need your team first, because the team is what will deliver. Around that team, you build a process that makes sense also for the business. So it's kind of it's a balance to strike there. And then you basically look at the process that you've built and go, okay, that's a weak point, that will fail. Nobody will do that unless I prompt them. And then you bring in the tool that kind of fills in the gap for you. Whereas what I see a lot of is people just say, okay, we're going to be a HubSpot business. Then they buy HubSpot, then they decide on the process, and then they implement people, try to fit them in there, which doesn't work. So I always,
So starting from people, teams, of course, and business goals to get the processes, and after that implement the processes into the system. Yeah, I think it makes sense. But I feel like there is a lot of interactions between the 3P, people, process, and platform. Because even if you start from team meetings to understand their issues, to understand their processes, etc. Sometimes you're designing a process, and you try to make this process into a system, into a tool, which it doesn't fit to the tool. And you're like, okay, so way around, we go back to the team, and you're like, okay, now we need to design maybe something more specific to the tool. But of course, the tool doesn't have to block you, to lock you in something. So of course you're customizing, etc. So yeah, okay, but makes sense to start with people and go through the other P, the process and the platform, right? What's for you, what we were talking about the systems, so the tools. For you were talking, of course, about the CRM, but if you had to mention other tools very important for RevOps, which tools were you talking?
Excel. There has not been a job yet where I've kind of gone, I just not going to spend any time in Excel at all. I think it's a shortcut to some of the stuff that we often ask of, like the data warehouse team, for example, because there's so much you can do, and I think it gets you the independence that you need as well. So like you're not relying on having a tool to transform data, for example, and you're not relying on somebody helping you with stuff. So I think that will still be a very, very important tool for years to come even. And I'd say as well, like your mouth.
Okay, interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I think RevOps is in the way that you present yourself to the team. And I think the most important thing you can do when starting is to establish yourself as somebody people trust. And you do that by having the conversations, and you do that by kind of delivering on the promises that you've given, but also constantly reaffirming this idea of, yes, you can come to me with stuff like that and I will help you. And that happens with your mouth. So that, you know, the way we present ourselves and the way we talk about our jobs and to other people is so, so important. And yeah, beyond the CRM, beyond Excel, I think if all of that got taken away from me, I know that I will still have a good standing with my peers, even though everything else has collapsed.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So the CRM, Excel, and your map.
And your mouth, yeah.
Okay. Right. Big things. Maybe one of the last question is, how do you recruit a RevOps person? Because I think you've been through a recruitment process. Then how do you recruit? You will recruit.
Yeah, so I've had to replace myself as well. I was a head of RevOps for Enrich, and I've basically had to kind of replace myself and hire somebody else to step into that role. And yeah, it was interesting because I think we found the right we found absolutely the perfect candidate. Like I couldn't be happier that we hired him. But the process of getting there was like, there was a lot of people who applied, and I've mentioned this before, but just people with no technical skills whatsoever. And I have said this already, but I'll say it again. It's so important as a team of one to be able to do the whole thing, because there is nobody else there to support you. So I've had conversations with people who were very senior in very corporate environments where they had that technical support. And I've just had to end the conversation by going, look, you're not going to do well here. You were a senior in corporate. In a startup, you will need a lot of support, and so you will become a cost center very, very quickly. So yeah, it was quite tricky, but it kind of emphasized that difference between corporate RevOps and startup or scale-up RevOps for me. Like they're just worlds and worlds apart, which is also why I don't tend to take advice from corporate RevOps people, because I'm like, you don't know. You don't know what it's like here. But yeah, so it's very interesting. I think the market's very interesting as well at the moment, because obviously the job is becoming well known, and there's a lot of people hiring for it, so people can ask for the salaries that they can actually live on, which is a big difference to when I was applying for my first official sales ops position. But I think there's still so much misunderstanding around what do I actually do in this job and what skills will I need. So I'm glad we're having this conversation and people know that one of the skills is their mouth.
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard for people defining what we are doing, basically, because most of the time they are just coming with maybe an issue or like something to optimize, and they're like, okay, just do it, whatever. And we're kind of like, most of people from RevOps I'm talking with, they're saying they are the whiz, like the wizard of something. But like your colleagues, basically, they know what you're doing, but they're more like, yeah, she's doing it and she's doing very well, but I don't really know. And wow, you did this process, okay, you implement this automation, that's amazing, and now we have like a ton of good things from this process. But sometimes it's a bit tricky, because that's why the mouth, like the capacity to say things that you're doing, it's pretty important. I totally agree with you, because just let people know that, yeah, I'm doing that and that in this tool with that, and it's for you. It's paying results. We have results from that, and thanks to me, you can close more deals, or you can get more leads, etc. It's pretty important to, the évangéliser in French, like evangelist.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But it's also like the most common complaint from RevOps people is that I am not appreciated in my company. And I feel like that's from our own doing. Like we have to be our own greatest cheerleaders and greatest promoters, because if you don't celebrate what you've done or showcase what you've done, like people are not going to know, because a lot of our stuff is back office. Like we don't win deals, we don't put out marketing campaigns, we just facilitate it, right? So if you don't talk about it, nobody else will.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally agree. Wow. Great. So we're gonna just finish on. Do you have any inspirational phrase to share with us? Something a mantra or something like that?
One thing I've recently printed out for my little mood board is make haste slowly. So it's a personal downfall of mine where I'm like, I'm just going to do it really, really quickly, and I just need to do it now. So it's that idea of like, slow it down but move fast through the thinking process, and the slowing down part comes from like, actually consider what it is that you're doing whilst you're moving. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It got me thinking.
Okay, getting more slow. Okay, slower. Get it. So thank you so much, Anastasia.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, and I see you guys. See you to the next episode to the RevOps Pooper. Bye bye.